Okay. Learning sponsors. It's Suwanani Garlic, a year of learning in memory of Malcolm Perlman. As people come in, we'll pick up. Okay. And Yisrael David ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Beryl ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Yosef Meir ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, and Rivka Pro Rosna bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch. In memory of family murdered in the Holocaust. Arav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bat Ephraim, Yisrael David ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Adia bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Pesel bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. Children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren of Toby Paris, Sarah Tova bat Yisrael Dov in her memory, Sarah Gelfenstein and Sam Levine in memory of Ramona Levine, Rachel Mata bat Asher, friends of Nina Moinester, Nechama Azna bat Yitzchak Aharon, many friends of Stephen Vigdor, Lezecher Nishmat Simcha Melech, Ben Meir Leib Halevi, friends of Marcy Kurtz in memory of her great niece Leah Bracha. Today is the 2nd, right, of May, right? So still a month of learning by the many friends of Lydia and Abe Krause in honor of their 50th anniversary. David and Mindel Cheslow in memory of his father, Moshe ben Ruvain Mordechai, Susan and Ruvain Podolsky in memory of her father, Simcha Buna ben Yeshua, Aaron and Mel Haller in memory of her father, Yosef Eliezer ben Tzvi Hirsch, Susan and Ruvain Podolsky in memory of her mother, Chaya Bas Avram Dov.
Your birthday is today.
Today. Shema Heaven Aliyah. B. Pizer in memory of her father, Yitzchak ben Shmuel. We have a week of learning by Jack Gilman. Okay, in memory of his brothers of Yosef ben Yitzchak, by Sharon and Michael Glass, in memory of her mother, Chaya Bas Avram Baruch, by Gail and Leslie Kaplan, in memory of her mother, Mushka Sprinza, Bat Yosef Chaim B'chava, by Judith Iger, in memory of her son, Anshel Yitzchak ben Aharon, and by Michael and Judith Poretsky, in memory of his mother, Rachel Bas Avram. Today we have a day of learning plus Torah fun by Gladys Sherman, in memory of her mother, Gidel Bas Issachar. We also have a day of learning by Dr. Zev and Madeline Stern, in memory of his father, Shimon Eltar ben Moshe, and by Ari and Judy Cohen, in memory of his father, Avram ben Yisrael Moshe HaKohen. Hashem is having Aliyah, Crank Ravihi, and Velti Yeshua Shem Atliya, and L'chol B'nai Yisrael a good Ben Shtia. All right. Okay. Thank you. All right. When we 3, that fell out of the envelope.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I have it, my jacket.
Yeah.
Here.
Okay.
I got
All right. So I want to. Again, we're still dealing with adults only, X-rated Gemara. What can I say? All right. When we finished on the top of Nun Vav Amud Beis, sorry. Okay, we got up to the end, the second line. Okay, is where we're going to start in a moment. But remember, we were still trying to. We saw there was a machloket clearly between a number of authorities. Shmuel was one of them. Okay. In terms of trying to define the 3, let's call it positions for the moment, of the male organ in relationship to the female body parts, okay? Genitalia, okay? That's the Italian way of pronouncing it, right? So what happens, okay? And we saw that, that why might we think, just for a moment to get back into the Gemara, that Shmuel's definition would be the most correct? What might make us think that the opinion should be according to Shmuel? What profession was Shmuel? He was a doctor. So we might think outside of the Gemara for the moment, aside what each of them said, that maybe his position was his definition was the most correct, and why should then we see a challenge raised not simply to Rabba bar Chana, but also to Shmuel. Okay, so as we continue with the Gemara, all right, we're going to just try to clarify that situation, and we're going to come across other situations, other cases. Okay. Okay. So I wanted to bring that up. Sorry, because notice what happens. We're starting line 2. Nun Vav. Sorry. Amud Aleph. Okay. The second line. Nun Vav, right? Isn't that our Gemara today?
Yes.
Sorry. Okay. So Gemara says, Echad ha'ma'arav ve'echad ha'gomer kana. Okay. Coming back to our Mishnah, that whether it was, I'm going to phrase it this way, an initial act of intercourse or a completed act of intercourse, in both cases, the Mishnah said that the Yabam will have acquired the Yabama, okay, and has made her his wife, right? My kana, what do we mean by kana here? Rav Amar kana lakol. According to Rav, it meant he acquired all possessions of his deceased brother. Okay. Now, that might be.
And if she's married, he's a Kohen, she can eat truma.
Okay. Okay. We're going to get to that more in detail, but you're right. Okay. But you're right. Okay. Ushmuel Amar lo kana ela l'dvarim ha'amurim b'parsha. And Shmuel disagrees, right? And he says it's only those items, okay, that are referred to vis-a-vis the Torah portion of Yibum. So in other words, those specific items, okay, that are referred to, okay, and not all his property. Okay, there would be some property, okay, theoretically, that she could get that he doesn't have usufruct from, right? That could be the case, right? So what happens? The Gemara continues, Li'eresh b'nichse aviv, to say that he's going to inherit the property of his brother, l'potra min hayibum. Maybe that means that we say, right, that when in defining that situation, right, that he inherits his brother's property entirely, and he also exempts her from the status of Ibum. Okay, what does that mean? Okay, let's see. Min hanisu'in. Okay, we says that it doesn't exempt her from, if it's a situation of marriage, right? The divrei hakol achla, daha havet ka'achla me'ikara. Okay, if we're talking about everything, and now we get into, as Ruvain suggests, if this was two brothers were Kohanim, since she was eating truma by means of her first husband, okay, right, and now, right, he was married, she was able to benefit from her first husband being a Kohen and eat truma with him. Okay, would it not seem logical that if she's marrying his brother, okay, who we're going to, for the moment, assume he's also a Kohen, all right, because we say Yibum is through the father, right, and that therefore she should continue to be able to eat truma in that regard, okay, right, because she had it, right, she benefited from eating truma before from her first husband, okay? The divrei akol achla, that's what it means. According to everybody, she was able to eat that truma. Daha havet ka'achla ma'akara, that she was able to eat it originally. Okay? Ki pligi, where do they argue? Min ha'erusin, when it was only a situation of betrothal, okay, and not marriage. Because there, she does not get to eat truma, okay? All right. Rav Amar,
First husband was a Cohen? First husband was a Cohen.
but if he died while she and he were only engaged, before they actually was brought into his home as his wife, he has no requirement, okay, to give her truma at that point.
I remember something about a Zman. If they were engaged for more than a year, then the Mepharshim said that she was allowed to eat.
Then that could be, all right? Because he was supposed to bring her into his house. The Nisuin should have taken place at that point. Then they'll say, the Mefarshim will say, he does have a chiyuv of Mefarnes, Lazun, etc., etc. Okay? That was to prevent long engagements. You're right, Sid. Okay? As well as other things. Okay? Right. All right? No, think of well, we'll get to that another point. All right? So Rav Amar Ochelet, Zahar Rabbi Rachmana, because the Kadosh Baruch Hu increased his concern, I'll say, or his rachamim, biat shogeg kemezid, because Rebbe was right. Why? Because Rav was of the opinion there that even if it was an unintentional sexual encounter, it is like it was an intentional, and therefore she is entitled to, it is therefore considered bia, adequate deoraita to be married, okay, and then she should be able to benefit eating truma, okay? Ushmuel Amar ki Rebbe Rachmana, and Shmuel disagrees because he said when the Kadosh Baruch Hu increased and showed his concern, what did he do? La'okmei b'makom ba'al, okay, to establish the yabam, all right, in the place of the husband, la'alume mi ba'al, okay, but in question of making him superior or better in any way than the husband, lo, that was not the case. In other words, he was to fulfill, so to speak, the minimum requirements of the husband.
Since the first husband couldn't eat because it was only Arison, so the second husband can't be
He
more
can't
than
be
the first.
more, he can't outdo what the benefits from the first husband, right? That's the point, okay? Right? Well, maybe that, maybe just simply the other issue was that it was only, as Reuven said, it was only an erusin with the first husband, but his having bia with her is the equivalent, we said, of nisuin deoraita.
The second one had it.
Right, all right? So that's
But
going to,
that can't make him more than the first one.
that's going to raise
That's-
our question, because we're going to see that's going to be challenged.
Right.
Because I could argue just the opposite. I could say, fine, that was in a situation of erusin. We're all in agreement that he does not have to provide that Kohen first husband truma. But this is an actual nisuin. Okay? I could argue that. Right? And let's see. All right? Ava azdat Shmuel atame, and Shmuel followed his reasoning. Da amar Rav Nachman amar Shmuel, says Rav Nachman in the name of Shmuel, kol shehaba'al ma'achil, whatever the husband is able to feed her, yabam ma'achil, the yabam must feed her. V'chol she'ein haba'al ma'achil, and that which the husband is not able to feed her, as in this case, a husband who was a Kohen husband who was only engaged and therefore doesn't feed her truma, ma'ach, right? Yabam eino ma'achil. And then likewise, the yabam has no requirement to feed her in that case. All right, meitive. But we're going to challenge this, okay? Because we're going to see the question was That may only be the case if they were engaged the first time around. Bat Yisrael Pikachat, we have a Jewish girl who is intelligent. Let's use that word. I don't want to use the word clever, but some would use that. But she is has full yediyah, full knowledge, right? She'nit arsa the Kohen Pikeach, and she became engaged also to a Kohen who had full intelligence. But what happened? Velo hispik lekonsa ad shenit charesh. But he did not they did not reach consummation of their marriage, and was bringing her into his house before he became a deaf mute. Right? Eina ochelet, says this writer. She does not get to eat truma. Okay, what happens, however, if that, and remember, that's a situation of engagement still. And here it says she doesn't get to eat truma. But the Braita goes on and tells us, mate, if that young Kohen, so to speak, who became a deaf mute, died, v'nafla lefnei yabam charesh, and then the brother, who was the Yabam, also was a deaf mute, right? Ochelet, she may eat. Now that would seem to indicate that in that particular case, the Yabam is better, right? And that seems to disagree with what Shmuel said. Okay. Ubazo yafeh koach hayabami koach haba'al, says the Gemara. And in that case, the power, the strength of the Yabam is greater than that of the original husband. Okay. Bishleim Rav Necha. Regarding the view of Rav, we don't have any problems there. That's fine. Ela l'Shmuel kasha. But for Shmuel, this is indeed problematic. Amar lach Shmuel. Shmuel would then say to us, Ema hachi. I would say the following. Velo hispik lekonsa ad shenit charesh. Our Braita specifically said that he did not bring her into his house until he became deaf mute. Therefore, eina achelet betruma. Therefore, she does not eat truma. Why? Because number one, he was a Kohen with a mum, and number two, okay, maybe that has something to do with it. We don't know yet. We'll see. But certainly, number two was the fact that it was only an engagement situation. Okay, kanas va'achar kach nitcharesh. But if he had brought her into his house and afterwards became deaf mute, ochelet, then she may eat. That's the implication. So his status then was based on the engagement and not the issue of any other physical situation of the Kohen, right? Mate v'naflelef ne'yavayim charesh, and if he died, that first husband Kohen, and she fell before a Yabam who was also what? Ochelet, she may eat. Umay bazo, and what do we mean when our Braita, right, basically said ubazo yafeh koach hayabam mi koach habaal? What did it mean in that case? And in this case, de'ilu baal charesh me'ikara lo ochelet. That here, if the husband was a charesh originally, she didn't get to eat. Ve'ilu yabam charesh me'ikara, and were the Yabam deaf originally, ochla, she was eating. Ve'ikada amre. Okay, so again, that seems to challenge Shmuel's view, right? Ve'ikada amri, and there are those, however, who say it in the following manner: Min ha'erusin divrei hakol lo achla. Based on an engagement situation, everybody's in agreement she doesn't eat the truma. Taha lo achla b'chaye ba'al, because in that case, all right, she wouldn't be eating even with the husband being alive, the first husband, all right? Ki pligi, when did they die? When did they argue? I'm sorry. Min hanisuin. They argued in regards to the situation of marriage. Rav Amar Ochelet. Rav says she eats the truma. Daha havat achla meikara, because she was able to eat it originally, earlier. Ushmuel Amar ina Ochelet. And Shmuel says she doesn't eat. Why? Ki Rabbi Rachmana biat shogeg kemezid. Okay, because Shmuel, when Hashem allows it to include a unwilling, okay, or unwitting bia to a purposeful bia, l'devarim hamurim b'parsha. It's limited only to those items that they referred to in the Torah section dealing with
Yavam.
Yabama, okay, with Yibum. Only those items. Aval lekol mile, but for everything else, such as the truma, lo, that's not applicable. V'ha'amar Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel, but didn't Rav Nachman say in the name of Shmuel, kol shehaba'am ma'achil yabam ma'achil, as we saw earlier, that anything that the original husband can feed her, the Yabam also is expected to feed her. Ema, I might say there, kol bia shahabam achil ba. Okay, any bia, okay, which results in the marriage that the husband therefore would feed her. Yabam ma'achil ba. Then in that case, the Yabam,
If he did the same type of beer,
that
would be
then he would also have the responsibility to feed her. V'chol bia she'ein habal ma'achil ba, which would be the unwitting bia. Okay, because remember Shmuel made a difference between them. So kol bia she'ein habal ma'achil ba. Okay, that would be the, as I said, the unwitting bia. Ein hayabam ma'achil ba. The Yabam does not have a responsibility to feed her. We'll challenge that. Meitive, with another brighter. Bat Yisrael pikachat, shenit arsa lekohen pikeach. Again, an intelligent Jewish girl who's engaged to a young Kohen who's intelligent. Velo hispik lekonsa ad shenit charesh, but he didn't have time to bring her into his household until he became a deaf mute. Eina ochelet. The Braita again says she does not eat. Mate, if he died, v'nafla lefnei yabam charesh, and she falls before a deaf yabam, ochelet. It says again she eats. Ubazo yafek koach yabam mikorach ba'al. And here again we see from this Braita that the power of the Yabam is greater than that of the original husband. Once more we say, Bishlema l'Rav. That's acceptable to the view of Rav. Why? Mitaretz, because he can explain it. He can come up with an answer, namely, Kidataretz mi'ikara. Namely, he would explain it that because she was able to eat originally, therefore she can eat truma as well with the Yabam, right? Ela l'Shmuel kasha, but for Shmuel it's problematic. And the Gemara says, indeed, kasha. Yes, it's problematic. Okay, so we really don't have a final statement there. Okay, new Braita. Tanu Rabbanan says this Braita, since we're talking about smart Jewish girls, Bat Yisrael pikachat shenit arsa lekohen pikeach. Again, what happens? Velo speak lekonsa ad shenit charesh. And he doesn't bring her into his house till he becomes deaf. Eina ochelet, says the Braita. She doesn't eat the truma. However, notice the difference in this Braita. Nolad la ben, if she had a son with this gentleman, ochelet, she does get to eat truma. Okay, we all know what's the reason. It's based on her having a male son. Okay, mate haben. However, if the son dies, right? Rabbi Natan Omer Ochelet. According to Rabbi Natan, she is still, I'm going to say, able to continue to eat truma
Right.
after, well, despite the death of the son. V'chachamim omrim eina ochelet. But the sages say she does not continue to eat truma. My tama de Rabbi Natan. What's the reasoning? Excuse me, of Rabbi Natan. Amar Rabbah. Says Rabbah, or il shukvar achla, since she was already previously eating while the son.
Why is the son so important? He's the Kohen.
He's the Kohen. So even if we were to argue that the husband became deaf, and as a Kohen with a mum, he does not participate in truma.
No, that's okay. He does.
He does. But were we to argue that she would still benefit eating truma through the son, but he does not.
The reason she can't eat truma is because he only did erison and not nisuin. So that's why she cannot eat truma. But if they have a child together, and the child,
Even while it's erusin only and not nisuin.
no, you can't have a child with the erison.
How is that possible?
No, that
It's
would
a
be,
mamzer. I mean,
Right, I'm only asking the question,
that's right. I mean,
right? So all I'm simply saying is,
technically, look,
you're right that,
technically, his bia as a cherish is not a valid bia.
right?
But I mean.
But they could produce a
Doesn't
son.
affect the suin, but yet it's possible for him to impregnate him.
Right, okay, so in any case, the point is that she benefited still, Rabbi Natan's argument is, she was eating truma based on something, in this
On the
case, we'll
son.
say on the son. When the son dies, he argues, since she was eating originally, she can continue. Okay, what happens? The Chachamim. So that's what he's saying. Ho'il shekvar achla, amar le'abai, ela me'ata. If that's the case, he says, Bad Yisrael sheniseit lekohen umitle. If this girl were to marry a Kohen and he dies, right? Tichol shekvar achla. Since she was able earlier to eat it, truma, before he died,
Without a son.
okay, then without a son, since she was eating in that line of reasoning, if she already had a chazaka, let's use that word, okay? If she had a chazaka of being able to eat truma while her husband was alive,
So it was because of him.
okay, it may have been because of him,
Only because of him.
okay?
Which is not a
But
point.
once he died, Rabbi Natan is saying, since she had this chazaka, that continues, and so she should be able to continue to eat. Okay,
If you're
that's what
saying that's the
Abaye,
reason, then you have a problem with
right,
that.
that's what Abaye is trying to derive from what Rabbi Natan said earlier. Okay,
You know, there's the sound of cruelty in here that should be removed from the almana. The right, all of a sudden, Esther Shmer kind Kluma.
okay.
You're through.
And you
How do
hear
you
that
start
from a
this?
Kohen.
Doesn't sound.
Okay, all right. We'll call you the compassionate Kohen. All right. All right. The compassionate Kohen has spoken. Ela kevan demitle paka le kedushate mina. So here's Abaye's argument. But once he's died, that cuts off the sanctity that by which she benefited in able
Being
to
an
be able to
Kohen.
eat truma. Okay, hachanami here too. Kevan damitle here too. Since the son, I'm going to put in here, died, right? Paka kedushate mina. That here too, in that case, his sanctity and the ability or the benefit of the Kohen status for her to eat should have been cut off at that point. Ela Amar Rav Yosef, says Rav Yosef, Kasava Rabbi Natan. Rabbi Natan must be of the opinion then, Nisuei Charesh Machilin Betruma. Okay, that even the marriage with a Kohen who's a Cheresh, okay, still is enough, okay, to allow her to eat truma. Velo gazrinan nesuei cheresh atu kiddushay cheresh. And we don't make a gzera, okay, that we say the marriage of a Kohen, okay, that's a cheresh, is similar to only the kiddushin of a cheresh, right? Amar le Abaye, and Abaye says as follows: Ihachi, if that's the case, nolad labein lamali, then why did our Braita bring up the example of saying that they had the son? Okay, labriut mishum l'Rabbanan, because of the rabbis, their view. V'liplog Rabbi Natan alayhu bereisha. So let Rabbi Natan argue with them at the outset. Take care, Sid. Okay. Okay. Shavik lahol Rabbanan adam asame miltahu. What did he do? He simply waited for the rabbis to finish their remarks, so to speak. Fahadar paligalayhu, and then he went and disagreed with them. Okay, ihachi, if that's the case, litnei, let the Mishnah teach us, or the Braita teach us follows. Meit habein eina achelet. If the son dies, she doesn't get to eat truma. Rabbi Natan omer achelet. And Rabbi Natan says, eats kasha. Indeed, that's problematic why the Mishnah wasn't formulated that way. Okay, new piece, new topic. V'chein haba'al achat mikol ha'arayot. And our Mishnah said, likewise, if one has relations with any other woman that is classified in the arayos categories. Okay? Amar Rav Amram, says Rav Amram, ha milta amar lach Rav Sheshet. This thing, he said, was said to us by Rav Sheshet. Let's go over to the next Amram. What happened? Va'anharinhu la'anayin mimat nidin. And he illuminated our eyes, okay, through this Mishnah, namely, Eshet Yisrael, Shene'ansa, okay, a Jewish woman who was raped, right? Afal pi shemuteret leba'ala, even though she is permitted still to her Israelite husband, right? Psula lekahuna, she is ineligible for marriage to a Kohen. Okay, now we're going to get further. Fatana tuna, okay, I remember, right? So Tana Shalanu, our Tana, okay, taught it as follows. V'chein, and similarly. Why does he say similarly? Haba al echat mikol ha'arayot hamurat b'Torah o psulot. And he said similarly, this applies to one of the other arayot, okay, referred to in the Torah, or other situations where a woman would be pasul, okay, to a kohen. My v'chein. So what do we mean then when we say and likewise or similarly? My love lo shana b'shogeg v'lo shana b'mezid. Didn't they already teach that there's no difference whether it is unwitting or whether it was not done in purpose? V'lo shana ba'onis, v'lo shana b'ratzo, and that was no difference if it was said it was done by force, okay, or willingly. Ukatani pasla, but it also teaches that it's invalid. Lo my, no, my v'chein. So therefore, again, what do we mean by and likewise and similarly? Aha'ara'ah. We're talking about the sexual act, the beginning of the sexual act. Aha'ara'ah daman. Hara'ah of whose? Ilema da'arayot. If we're talking about regarding arayot, the memra da'arayot yalfei miyabama. We might have said that maybe the example of the arayot will learn from the example of Yabama. Mara challenges and says, Adrabah, just the opposite. Yabama yalfinin me arayot. We learn the example of Yabama based on the example of arayot. Why? De'ikar ha'ara'ah ba'arayot kativ. Because the original place where the discussion of applying what kind of sexual relationship will then render one punishable by korate is in regards to arayot. That's where it's written. Elamai v'chein. So what then do we mean when we say and likewise, furthermore? All right. Ashalo kedarka the arayot. Okay. If it's a situation of a different kind of sexual encounter. All right. Adraba, just the opposite, says the Gemara. Ikar mishkave isha ba'arayot kativ. But wasn't here too. We use the plural,
And
mishkave.
that includes.
So that includes
Kedarka,
kedarka and shalo kedarka. All right? Regarding either way, in regards to arayot, there is the karet
It's
prohibition.
usher.
Us, right. That's it. Ella. My v'chein. So what then do we mean by v'chein? Ashalo kedarka dechai ve'lavin. Maybe we're talking about examples that it's a different sexual position, okay, where there's not a karet prohibition, but simply a simple love. Okay, what example can we pick up right away? Okay, Kohen situations, right? Okay, now, however, the Gemara picks up and now tries to clarify. Amar Rabbah, says Rabbah, Rava the following: Eshet Kohen Shana Ansa. So let's take the example of a Kohen's wife who has been raped. What happens? Ba'ala, her husband, namely the Kohen, if he continues to have sexual relations with her, what happens? Loke aleha. He gets malchus, right? Mishum zona, because of her status. Now, as if he is having relations with a zona. So the Gemara continues, Mishum zona en, Mishum tum'a lo. You're saying he's getting malchus, punishment for relations with a zona. But what about any situation of tuma? What about that? Ema af mishum zona. Then I might say, in addition.
The Torah by the Kohen says you can't acher hu tamo.
Right.
That's
Okay.
why the Torah refers it to as tuma.
Right. So what happens? So we'll say in addition to tuma, also with a zona. Okay. Meitiv Rabbi Zera. And so Rabbi Zera then comes, all right, and he says as follows, Vehi lo nitpasa. But the pasuk also says, right, and she hasn't been taken.
She wasn't forced.
In other words, she wasn't forced into the situation. Asura,
And that's talking
nevertheless, she's forbidden,
that pasuk is talking about so.
right? Ha nitpasa. But if she has been taken, in other words, with its onus, muteret, that would seem to imply that that woman is permitted. V'yesh lach acheret she'af al pi shenitpasa asura. But you have another example of a situation where if a woman has been forced or taken, that she's forbidden. Ve'ezo, what is that? Zo eshet kohen. That's the wife of a kohen. V'lav haba miklal aseh, aseh. And don't we say that if we have a negative, a prohibition that comes as a result of an aseh, it is, so to speak, simply an aseh. What happens? Amar Rava, says Rava, hakol hayu b'klal zona. Now, all these were included in the general category of the zona. And when he spelled it out to you, when he said it explicitly, Akatuv, Gabe Eshet Yisrael. Okay, and regarding to the wife of Israel. Vehi lo nitpasa, when she has not been taken, Asura. Ha nitpasa, but if she was, muteret, then she would be permitted. Miklau, the Eshet Kohen, to the kaima kaima. Why? Because from the klal, we understand that the wife of the Kohen, she remains in the status that she was in. In other words, if she was raped, if she was raped, then she remains in that status of a anusa, which is like a zona, and therefore she is considered still a zona. The ikada amri. But there are those who phrase it a different way. Amar Rabba, says Rabba. Eshet Kohen shene'ansa. Take the wife of a Kohen who was raped. Ba'ala lo ke'ala mishum tum'ah. Okay, that we say her husband, the Kohen, if he has relations with her, gets malchus based on becoming a tameh.
Became tummy. All
right.
After she became tummy.
Mishum tum'ah in mishum zona lo. So now we're flipping it, right? We're saying he gets malchus for tuma, but he doesn't get malchus for having relations with a zona. Okay, alma. Therefore, ba'ones lo karina be zona. In a situation of anus, we don't call her, perhaps in this lashon, we don't call her a zona in that
You can't
situation.
interchange Tuma and Zona. I mean, Zona is anyway Tuma. I mean, like
Well, we'll see. Lo, says the Gemara. Alma, therefore, ba'ones lo karina be zona. Okay, in that situation, says the Ikeda Amre, we say we don't call her Hazona.
right.
Okay, so what happens? Meitiv Rav Zera. Excuse me. Okay, Vehi lo nitpasa. We said that she wasn't taken, it wasn't forced. In other words, Asura. Again, we say she was prohibited then. Ha nitpasa. If she were taken and it was against her will, muteret, she should be permitted. V'yeshlach acheret she'af al pi shenitpasa asura. And you have another example where, in that case, even though she's been taken, she's forbidden. Ve'ezozo, and which is it? Eshet Kohen, again the wife of the Kohen. V'lav haba miklal aseh. But don't we have just a general prohibition here that's that is included in a klal aseh, and therefore it basically comes to the aseh.
He gets
Okay, but how say that? Amar Rabba, says Rabba, Hakol Hayu B'Klal. They were all based on the klal. Acharei Asher Hutma'a, after she had become Tumeah. Kasheparat Lecha Katuv Gabe Eshet Yisrael, as was explicitly spelled out by the text regarding Eshet Yisrael. So the Gemara says, but what about that phrase? Vehi lo nitpasa asura. When we imply that if she was not done or taken, okay, she's still forbidden. Hanit pasa muteret. But if she was taken, forced, in other words, she's permitted. Miklal de eshet kohen the kaima. Because here again we say that the status of the wife of the kohen, if she had been raped or things like that, she still exists in that original status. That status doesn't change. Okay. We now get to a new Mishnah. And I just wanted to quickly point out that remember we said that previously that it talked about psula. Okay. So here we're going to get to that examples as well. Okay. Matnitin, our new Mishnah teaches as follows. Okay. Almana Kohen Gadol. Okay, a widow vis-a-vis the Kohen Gadol. Grusha v'chalutza Kohen Hidyat. Okay, a divorcee or a chalutza regarding a common Kohen. Min ha'erusin, regarding the status only, I'll say, betrothal. We'll use that phrase. Lo yochlu b'truma. One, they do not eat, or she doesn't get to eat truma. Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon machshirin. But Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon say it is valid. Let's use that translation for the moment. Nit armalu, nit garshu min hanisuin. If they became divorced, okay, or widowed from a marital status, psulot, then they are invalid, right? Min ha'erusin, If that became the situation from an engagement status, kshirot, then they would be valid. They could then still marry a Kohen. Gemara, so following Tanya, we learn in a Braita, Amar Rabbi Meir. Says Rabbi Meir, Kal v'chomer. Isn't this I'll put in quotes, a simple Kal v'chomer, namely, Uma kedushe reshut ein ma'achilin, whereas in
Allowable.
A Jew marrying a Jewish woman.
a normal, acceptable marriage situation, right? Kedusha, right? Machilin,
Ein machil.
ein machilin, he doesn't give her. Kedusha avera, if we're talking about an engagement where there is an prohibited, okay, well, I'll use that term for the moment. Lo kosherkin, how much more so? No, shouldn't feed her. Amrule, but they said back to Rabbi Meir the following: Lo, you're wrong. Ima marta b'kiddushay reshut shekain ein lo lahachil b'makom acher. Okay, if you're going to say that in a viable, let's say, in engagement, that she's not going to be fed, but she could be fed in another situation. Tomar b'kedushe avera. Are you going to say that in regards to a prohibited engagement, shekain yesh lo la'achil b'makom acher, where perhaps she could be fed in another situation?
If it was possible, but if it was a valid
Right.
engagement to the Kohen, then she couldn't.
Could be.
So maybe
That's the
fact
case.
was invalid.
Amar Rabbi Elazar, Amar Rabbi Yoshaya says as follows. Let's take another example. Patsua daka Kohen, Shekidesh bat Yisrael. A Kohen who had his body parts problematic. Okay, what happens? And he becomes engaged to a Israelite girl. Banu lemachloket Rabbi Meir v'Rabbi Eliezer v'Rabbi Shimon. There we come to the machloket between them, right? Namely, what happens? The Rabbi Meir de Amar mishtameret labia psula de oraita lo achla. So, because according to Rabbi Meir, what is he arguing? Okay, that if she is enabled to have bia, okay, of a valid variety,
He's a suadaka, so
right?
it's not valid.
All right,
bia.
so it's enabled to have a valid bia according to the Torah, she doesn't get to eat truma. Hanami lo achla. Here too, she doesn't get to eat. The Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Shimon, the Amrei, and what do they say? Mishtameret labia psula de oraita, that the one who is involved with a invalid bia according to the Torah, achla, she does get to eat. I'm just going to go over a tiny bit on Nun Zion. Ha, what do we mean? Ha, here, that's the woman hazot hamishtameret labia psula, that woman. Nami achla mimai. You're saying here that she is able to eat on what basis? Dilma ad kan lo ka'amre Rabbi Eliezer v'Rabbi Shimon. Maybe they say up to that point. What? Hatam ela yesh lo la'achil b'makom acher. Situation where she can be fed truma from another source. Aval hacha, but with the kohen who's pasul, the ein lo lahachil b'makom acher lo, and that's where we're going to stop. Okay? That in this case she still couldn't eat.
Okay.
Halachically in the Torah, when he acquires her, she's Kenyan Kafton, she could eat. That's the more svora to say she could eat because she's Kenyan
Theoretically, right.
Where you going? Okay. Okay.
Right.
Okay, you go. Yeah, I'll go with you.
Okay.
I'll go with the egg, so we're not down. Okay? Thank you.
Anyone want to take a ride?
Huh?
Anyone want to take a ride?
Okay.
Unusual.
So Kenny, when we're gonna reach,